We have Dr. Siobhan Kelleher. Siobhan has over 20 years senior leadership experience in the areas of clinical trials, business development and marketing. She has a unique education portfolio spanning scientific, clinical and commercial training. She's passionate about health and well-being and the ability of food, medicine and technological innovation to save and improve the lives of patients and their family. She's currently leading projects funded by Enterprise Ireland, Science Foundation Ireland and the European Research Commission to develop a novel digital biomarker to diagnose, monitor and treat chronic inflammatory endocrine conditions such as endometriosis. She's recently, having secured funding, commenced a startup that spun out of NUIG, Scision Medical, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, to continue research and development of the novel digital biomarker to facilitate earlier and easier diagnosis of endometriosis. I'm going to let Siobhan then make a start on her presentation and tell us all about her project. Thank you, Siobhan.
So, thank you for that great introduction, Hilary. And good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you. So first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I've ended up working in endometriosis. So as Hilary has mentioned, I'm a scientist. So I have a master's in cell biology and a PhD in pharmacology. And then I moved into industry and I worked in ICON clinical research in Sydney and back in Dublin. And after that, I moved into the world of pharmaceutical multinationals. And I worked in many sales and marketing roles and commercial access roles, both here in Ireland and across Europe, for multinationals such as Wyeth and Novartis and MSD. Now, during that time, I went back and I did a master's in health policy and health services management. In 2015, I started to take a look at my life and I left industry and I wanted to make a direct impact on patients' lives. And I was trying to figure out a way to bring all my skills and experience together. And I found a medtech innovation program based in Galway called BioInnovate. And it's a sister program to Stanford Biodesign. And it's where you go into a clinical setting and you look for problems. You look for unmet clinical needs, and then you try and develop a solution to address those problems. So after completing that program, I looked at women's health because there's just so many problems and I guess opportunities to innovate. And when I spoke to stakeholders, and that's clinicians and also women, endometriosis was mentioned again and again. And that's because there's literally just so many problems, from, delayed diagnosis to the fact that that current treatments just merely manage symptoms. So for those of you who are not familiar with endometriosis, it's a chronic inflammatory condition, and it's as common as diabetes in women, and yet not many people have heard of it. It results in chronic pain day in and day out, and not just pain, but also fertility issues. Up to 47% of women will experience fertility issues. It occurs when tissue similar to that which lines your uterus grows uterus in the pelvic cavity, causing inflammation. So traditionally, this area has been underfunded and under-researched. As I mentioned, it's a chronic inflammatory condition, but it's a very complex condition. We don't know the cause, and there's likely to be many underlying mechanisms and contributing factors. So promisingly, there is research being conducted here in Ireland and also across Europe. And I'm going to talk to you about the research we've conducted over the last 5 years in the University of Galway. Now, when you're developing any innovation, it's good to include the users of that innovation in the development pathway. And from the very beginning, we have been engaging with clinicians and most importantly, women in terms of designing a solution to address their needs. We have worked with women to understand their lived experience of the disease and to really identify their pain points. And what we have developed is a novel digital biomarker. This is the first of its kind, and it's based on measuring a physiological marker or a biosignal in the woman's abdomen. We know that this biosignal is altered in women with endometriosis. So, sensing this biosignal, we are developing a diagnostic test. And by modulating or normalizing this biosignal, we plan to develop a non hormonal treatment approach. Well, first of all, we need to know more about this biosignal and we need to focus on the diagnostic test. So, if I speak a little bit more about diagnosis, the ENDOCOS study was conducted across 10 countries across Europe and in the US. And they found that on average, it takes 7 years and 7 visits to get a referral to a specialist for a diagnostic laparoscopy, which is currently the gold standard in diagnosing endometriosis. So, what does that mean for women? Well, women will live a not only physical and emotional and mental burden, but also it'll mean an impact on their future financial prospects. With many girls missing and many women having to take time off work to diagnose endometriosis. It's a highly individual condition, and same no two women will have the same symptoms. For a
Apologies,
GP,
Siobhan.
it's literally a guessing game.
Sorry, Siobhan.
Yes?
Yeah. So maybe if you just take your audio, your camera off, maybe it might come across a little bit stronger. We're just missing a few words there. That's all. Just a few.
Okay.
So maybe if it might just strengthen the
connection.
No, the PowerPoint is perfect. No, your PowerPoint is perfect. If you just take off if you take off your camera, your presentation is gone. Okay, no, that's grand. It's more important to have the presentation. No, not at all.
Are we okay now, Mary?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's perfect, yeah.
Okay, so will I take up from the problem from this slide? Okay.
That'll be perfect. That'll be perfect, Siobhan. Thank you.
Okay. So the problem in relation to diagnosis is that it has been demonstrated through the ENDOCOS study, which is conducted across 10 countries, across Europe and in the US, that it takes on average 7 years and 7 different physician visits to get a referral to a specialist to conduct a diagnostic laparoscopy, which is currently the gold standard in diagnosing endometriosis. So for women, this means that they live with the physical, psychological, and emotional burden of the disease, but also it impacts their future financial prospects because younger women will have to take time off school and time off university, and other women will have to take time off work. But from a GP perspective, it's not easy to diagnose this condition. There currently isn't a non-invasive tool available to them. It's literally a guessing game because the disease is highly individual and no two women will have the same symptoms. So misdiagnosis is very common. There's very long waiting lists for a diagnostic laparoscopy, both here and in other countries across Europe. And during this time, women will end up in A&E because of excruciating pain. For those women who do manage to get a diagnostic laparoscopy, a fifth of them will be found not to have endometriosis when they histologically examine the lesions. What we're aiming to do is reduce that time from 7 years to 3 months. We're developing a SheSense device, and that will be prescribed by the physician and worn by the woman in the comfort of her own home. She will wear it for 15 minutes a day for at least one menstrual cycle. The wearable will monitor the biosignal in the woman's abdomen, and she will also enter her symptoms into an app. When we compare her data against a comparable data set, our proprietary algorithm will be able to give the likelihood of this woman having endometriosis. So together, this woman and her GP can decide what are the most appropriate next steps. Will they start treatment? Will they discuss fertility options, or should she get a referral to a specialist? In terms of the technology to date, in terms of our development, we are basing our development on a mechanism called retrograde menstruation. As I mentioned, there are many contributing factors to endometriosis, and we are looking at one theory, which is Sampson's theory. Retrograde menstruation happens when a woman bleeds. The blood or endometrial tissue may also go back up through the fallopian tube and into the pelvic cavity. Now, this happens to all women at their time of month. However, for those women who have endometriosis, there is an increased level of retrograde menstruation. Being able to measure uterine motility or uterine contractions will allow us to measure this retrograde menstruation. Now, there's many ways we can do this. We could develop a intrauterine device. We could develop a vaginal ring, or we could develop a wearable device. And we asked women, what would they like? So we conducted a survey across 2,000 women globally, and 64% of them indicated that their preference for a wearable. Uterine contractions or uterine motility is measured routinely in pregnant women. It's technically more difficult to do this in non-pregnant women. And our first task was to developing sensing algorithm in order to be able to do this. So we looked at preclinical models, at a rat model where we directly measured the electrical activity of a uterine horn. We induced endometriosis into rats, and we compared those healthy rats with those who had endometriosis, and we could see that their signal was significantly altered. But would this translate to humans? So we started to look at healthy volunteers in the university setting. Unfortunately, this is around the same time of COVID, when we didn't know what the virus was during the first lockdown, when we saw those scary images of what was happening in Italy in the mass graves. The university shut and everybody was asked to leave. And we thought our research was over. But thanks to the generosity of women across Ireland who volunteered their data when they were at home, homeschooling and trying to manage everything during COVID, we were able to continue. We posted out a device which was CE certified for research purposes, and they took data across 4 time points in the menstrual cycle, day 1, 7, 14, and 21. And when we looked at that data, we could see increased uterine motility at day 1 and day 14, which is what we would have expected. The next question was, is this different in women with endometriosis? And thanks to women who had surgically diagnosed endometriosis, they too volunteered their data. Women like Katie, who you're going to speak to later. And we could see that indeed their signal was altered relative to the normal healthy signal. So what does this mean? As I mentioned earlier, surgery has been to date the gold standard in diagnosing endometriosis. However, it's very hard to access and it is costly. Imaging too is used, again, in a hospital setting and has to be performed by a skilled, trained person. There are many startups looking at molecular biomarkers, that is, looking at markers in saliva and in tissue and in blood samples. However, they're point-in-time tests, unlike our SheSense device, which allow us to continuously monitor data over the menstrual cycle. But most importantly, when we can identify those women with an abnormal signal, we potentially can normalize that signal. So therefore, delaying the progression of the disease and protecting future fertility. So what does earlier diagnosis mean? Well, for women, it would mean earlier treatment and improved quality of life. For the general physician, it reduces the number of inappropriate treatments. And for the health service, it reduces costs because we'll have less false positives, making sure that the right woman gets the surgery quicker. So in brief, with SheSense, we aim to reduce the time to diagnosis from 7 years and 7 different physician visits to just 3 months and 1 physician visit. We believe that women deserve better. They deserve an answer. And as Hilary has mentioned, we are now licensing the technology from the university and spinning out into a startup called Cision Medical. This is a platform technology which has applications across many pelvic health conditions. So by investigating this digital biomarker, we hope to change the treatment and diagnostic paradigm for not only endometriosis, but other conditions such as menopause, polycystic ovarian syndrome, etc. We have been lucky to have the support of Enterprise Ireland, Science Foundation Ireland and EIT Health. And as Hilary has mentioned, we have recently secured European funding in the form of EIC transition funding to allow us to continue our research and development. So now I'll hand you back to Hilary, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Siobhan, and that's really interesting to hear that there is work being done, and hopefully this will kind of find a piece of the jigsaw that in a very, very complex disease. And the more of this work that can be funded, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to just now introduce you to our second speaker, Derval. So Derval Ormond is the founder of Friendo, and Friendo is a smartphone app that's been designed to empower endometriosis patients and those suffering with suspected symptoms through disease monitoring, support, and community. Despite experiencing symptoms and several misdiagnoses since young adulthood, it took medical professionals around the globe 18 years to provide Derval with an endometriosis diagnosis that would explain her severe pain, erratic sickness, and issues she faced, and that impacted various aspects of her life significantly. As a result, she created Friendo as a means to help reduce the diagnosis journey for the 1 in 9 women who will experience the disease in their lifetime, and to create a community for those women to share their experiences and seek support from one another, thus reducing the isolation that so many feel in those years while they're waiting for a diagnosis and while they manage their illness on an ongoing basis. Prior to founding Friendo, Derval worked for several years in leadership roles within startups, most recently as a founding team member of the medtech cancer app Cancer Aid, and with KPMG Australia's high growth ventures business as head of marketing. Derval's current plans for Friendo are to continue implementing endometriosis screening and information campaigns in schools and workplaces, reducing the stigma and raising awareness of the disease in order to break the cycle early, and thus improving the time to diagnosis, and as a result preventing the progression rates of this disease and reducing the cost to society. So I'm going to hand you over now to Derval, who's going to speak to you about her product and her journey. Thank you, Derval.
Thanks so much, Hilary, and thank you all. It's great to see so many this morning. And I think even from a patient perspective, I'm delighted that this has been covered, and yeah, really happy. And I think all the action is very much appreciated from a patient's perspective. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my background now and about Friendo. Just share. Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Mary. I'm Derval Ormond. I am one of the estimated 360 million women worldwide with endometriosis. I guess my symptoms started when I was around 16. I remember distinctly the weekend that it started, and I was going to Paris with my family. Really excited as a teenager to go away with them, and I was pretty much struck down by pain, and almost like a rope was wrapped around my abdomen, and it was pulling tightly around there, and getting more and more painful, bringing me to my knees. But also I was bedridden for the whole weekend, and that was, I guess, the start of the illness, but also the start of the long investigation into what was wrong with me. I was lucky enough to be that I am lucky enough to be the daughter of a GP, so I was presented with lots of opportunities to see different specialists. However, it still took a whole 18 years to get diagnosed. Along that road, the types of specialists that I had seen were people like immunologists, gastroenterologists, because I suppose the symptoms present themselves, in forms of chronic fatigue, with very severe gastro symptoms. And again, as Siobhan has pointed out, the symptoms can really vary from person to person. I think really when I finally got diagnosed by an endometriosis expert, instead of being tearful about being diagnosed with a chronic illness, I did feel elated. I think I felt a burden along those a lot throughout those years. I felt like, was I making it up? Was this actually real? And I do think the impact of those misdiagnoses and the isolation that you feel on that journey, no matter how much support you have, can almost be worse than the illness itself. I was continuously collapsing as a result of the pain, or because, as I later found out, because the disease was hitting off nerves. I once fractured my sternum and cracked my chin open, and as a result, they were investigating whether this was to do with a neurological issue, which again creates more sort of panic within you. I think that the unexplained and this erratic nature of the disease really does play havoc with not just your life, but also very much the trust you have in your own body, because it can come on very suddenly from one moment to the next. As Hilary mentioned, I was in Australia. I was working for KPMG at the time, and I had had my third surgery for the removal of the disease, and I was really only getting about 6 months relief out of it. And I was getting pretty fed up, and I made some changes in my life. I decided to move back to Ireland to be closer to family, to get the support that I needed for the disease. And I also decided to set up Friendo, because I felt myself really quite alone throughout the whole journey, and then of diagnosis, but also in managing the disease. I couldn't really connect with others. So I developed the app initially as a social network, but then going back to the drawing board, I guess that the real barrier here is this diagnosis delay. And as a result, the progression rate of the disease really does worsen as time goes on. So we worked with a professor in France on a case-controlled study to develop a screening survey. So I designed what I'd hoped I'd had all those years in order to help stop that and help, create a space for younger girls. As Siobhan has mentioned quite a bit of this, but it is I'm going to just run over it quickly. The endometriosis is a whole body systemic inflammatory disease. It is moving away from now being a reproductive disease. It can be serious. It can cause lung damage, organ dysfunction, infertility, and more. In my most recent operation, they found the disease up through my ribs and up into my upper abdomen. It's a disease that affects 1 in 9 women and people with periods. It takes on average 7 to 11 years to diagnose, but you'll hear from many others that it took a lot longer, like myself. The exact cause of endometriosis is unknown, but the latest research is showing that it is likely to be a combination of factors stemming from embryonic origin and genetic components. This is why Friendo identifies sufferers at the very earliest possible entry point in their journey. It builds a direct healthcare relationship with them from onset of symptoms, through diagnosis, through that treatment, fertility or infertility challenges, and beyond. Friendo is a multi-platform app for endometriosis patients and those who suspect they have symptoms and are going through a journey on their own. With Friendo, users can improve their journey to diagnosis and treatment through a community connection and better doctor-patient symptom and disease monitoring, ideally reducing unnecessary appointments and, most importantly, improving patient well-being. The features of the Friendo app are, as I mentioned, a screening survey, and through that, it gives the patient or the sufferer a probability or likelihood of having endometriosis that they can then export and bring to their GP or clinician, giving them some form of validation. The second feature is an endometriosis specific tracker. There are lots of trackers out there, but this is designed by myself, a patient, and it is extremely extensive, not just tracking your period, but tracking your pain, the pain type, the pain area, because with endometriosis, it really can vary from, vulva, rectal, a variety of areas. It also tracks your lifestyle. It tracks your exercise, your nutrition, your medication. So really taking a broad and lateral picture of what may be helping and what may be hindering the illness. The community offers the patient or sufferer an opportunity to connect with others who have been on a similar journey. It also offers credible resources from the likes of Endometriosis Australia and endo experts, giving them, preparation notes on how to prepare for a surgery, how to talk to an employer, how to talk to a new partner about the disease, and a health profile so they can stay organized in those times of brain fog or feeling really unwell. They can gather all of their blood test results, their surveys in the one place. Our user attraction to date. So we are in market and we have, we have nearly 25,000 tracker inputs into the app. We have nearly 6,000 signed up users and 5,500 screening surveys. And this is all organic traction to date. So what we're seeing there really is that people are tracking. People really want to track where their pain is, when their pain is, and try to improve and have a visibility of what that looks like in order to manage their chronic illness. Our business model is a B2C and a B2B. We have an app store free and a premium option. And we have a licensed product that we sell into corporates and medical institutions, and all feeding into data utilization to create better treatment pathways for patients. So, as I mentioned, we have corporate licenses that we sell into corporate benefit teams, because we have seen latest research from Endometriosis Australia has shown that 1 in 6 people with endometriosis have lost their job as a result of endometriosis, and over 50% of them have been negatively impacted. And this is mainly due to endo sufferers being affected 1/3 of each month due to productivity loss or time off work. And what we want to do is bring them back to work. We want to support the employer, giving them the premium app and giving them a coaching and supporting program to help bring them back after a flare-up, to help bring them back quicker after a surgery and not feel so alone, and help the employer not lose so many staff members. Our partnerships, as I've mentioned, are supporting that model, that corporate model. Endometriosis Australia, we've literally just launched today. Our Endo at Work program, Enterprise Ireland, Australia are hugely supportive of us there, which is great. And Endometriosis Foundation UK are supporting us in the UK. We've been building our brand and we've won some awards. But now our mission really is to create a national endometriosis screening offering with major information campaigns. We want to break the cycle early in line with this event to stop the progression rate of the disease. We want to get to young girls when the first symptom starts. We don't want to scaremonger, but we want to give them the information that they need. We will continue to build our clinical trials partnerships to use real-world data that we have to create real-world change and better treatment pathways. And we will scale to other conditions that are impacted by endometriosis, like friendofertility. We want to become the go-to endometriosis solution trusted by patients, trusted by their partners who can support them, and by doctors worldwide. Where we are now, we are in the middle of an integration with Chelsea and Westminster Hospital into their endometriosis clinic. We're running a GP pilot in Ireland. We've just launched our Endo at Work program with Endometriosis Australia. And we're working with Carl Schwartz on that data utilization piece to create better treatment pathways for patients. Endometriosis is arguably one of the most common and devastating diseases on the planet, but many people have never heard of it. So it is now past time to recognise that it is a disease that needs to be dealt with by society as a whole, and it's a path that can be changed by you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Derval. Thanks so much for sharing your personal story and for putting the work in to develop this tool that hopefully it's already helping patients, but hopefully in the future, as you move forward with the product, it can be that another piece of that jigsaw in terms of that data, that, you know, getting evidence for, you know, improving diagnosis, improving treatments, etc., etc. So thank you so much for that. Our next speaker is Katie, and Katie Coughlin is a patient advocate. Katie is an early childhood care education Montessori teacher from Galway who's studying at Mary Immaculate College to become an inclusion coordinator in her service. In addition to this full programme of work and study, Katie coaches and plays basketball for Titans Basketball Club and has received multiple awards for her work, founding a basketball team for children suffering from developmental coordination disorder. And one of the awards she received was the Irish Sports Federation Volunteer of the Year 2021 award. Kate first received her diagnosis after 6 years of suffering in 2017 at 21 years of age. The laparoscopic ablation surgery used to diagnose and treat her at that time did not give much relief, and in March 2022, a second laparoscopic procedure was carried out, this time via excision surgery. Katie has advocated openly on RTE Science to the Rescue and Hospital Live about her condition, as well as spreading awareness throughout social media. So welcome, Katie, and when you're ready, it'd be great to hear your story.
Good morning, everyone. As Derval said, it's brilliant to see so many people here listening to the condition, what's being done, both in terms of physical, medical and emotional support for people with endometriosis. So I suppose my own story started when I was 15. I became really, really ill around my time of the month and ovulation. So 2.5 weeks of each month, I'd be on the floor. I couldn't move. I would get severe stomach issues, vomiting. It wasn't manageable, and I was on a lot of pain medication from an early age. I went to my GPs. I was given multiple different diagnoses between IBS. They thought I had stress-induced gastritis. I was informed I should go to a counsellor because I was taking on too much stress, and that it was probably anxiety building up. And as time went on, it became about my family and friends questioning what I realised what was going on in my own body. So this went on for 6 years. It was when I was 20, so it was actually September 2016. I read an article in Cosmopolitan, and it was 5 individual people speaking about their symptoms and their misdiagnoses before they realised that it was actually endometriosis affecting them. So I decided to make an appointment with a different GP within my practice and give one final push. Because mentally I was burnt out. I had been on 5 different contraceptive pills, each of them affecting my mental health particularly, as well as not giving me much physical relief. And I was starting to feel like I was going insane. So I went, and for the first time I was listened to. I was told, you know what, there's a high possibility you're right. Now, I did end up very unwell that year, and it took multiple letters from my GP saying that it was urgent, that I finally received my first laparoscopy in 2017 in the November, which confirmed that I had what they would call mild endometriosis, so stage 2. But it was such a relief. And even before going into the surgery, I was told, you know, realistically, we're probably not going to come across anything, which, you know, is another blow when you're just looking for a bit of help, a bit of reassurance that what you're feeling is true. So I did receive a bit of relief having had my first laparoscopy. It was with ablation, which is the charring of the tissue on top, not removing the root, which we now realise is not the gold standard of treatment, which I didn't realise at the time. So I went back to my GP and my consultant, and I explained that I was still very unwell, and I was told that I needed to go on more pain management. So I actually ended up, I had a Mirena coil inserted in April. I was put on another contraceptive pill on top of it to try and manage the symptoms. And I was prescribed 3 times a day, a gram of paracetamol with 50 milligrams of tramadol and 500 milligrams of Ponston. Which in my area of work, working with children, isn't a very appropriate way to be doing it. You know, you're a young woman, you're supposed to be able to be living life, doing what your friends were doing, experiencing things, traveling abroad, and I was cancelling left, right and centre. It wasn't doable. I became about trying to figure out getting through the day-to-day rather than planning ahead. So just before we went into lockdown, I ended up very unwell again, and I was referred to the pain clinic in Galway, and I got put down on the waiting list again for a second laparoscopy. But we went into lockdown, and thankfully, before we went into lockdown, I was on Instagram and I came across Endometriosis Ireland and the Galway support group, which absolutely lifted me through lockdown, and I gathered so much information from. It's where the majority of all of my information around treatment and planning and even support and understanding has come from, and I felt so lifted physically and emotionally. So we would have monthly meetings through lockdown, and that got me through. Unfortunately, my surgeries kept getting cancelled, and I realised that the consultant that I was under was not the right consultant for me because they were not specialising or did not have interest in endo. So I went on Facebook onto the support group there, and I read a fantastic article about a different consultant up in Sligo. And I asked to be referred to him as I had heard that he was carrying out excision surgery. So during this time, I was another year on the waiting list. This brought us up to 2020. And I was starting to wonder whether the surgery was going to go ahead. Work became unmanageable, sport, which is a massive aspect of my life, coaching, and just my ability to socialise was severely impacted by the pain that I was now experiencing because it was every day. It was every day, and it was really hard. I work in a very physical area, and it's just not doable, and I can't call in sick because if I don't go to work, I don't get paid, unfortunately. So I actually, rather than taking out my first loan for a car like all my friends were doing, I took out my first loan to look into going abroad, because I didn't have private insurance. And that was a hugely mental decision that it took on me, because I was now having to do something that a 24, 25-year-old girl doesn't have to consider normally in the day-to-day. And it's a lot. You're becoming an adult a lot sooner. You're thinking about your future rather than living in the present. Fortunately, in March 2021, or 2022, last year, I received my second laparoscopy with surgical excision. And I received a second Mirena coil because it had to be removed. They found that all the endo that had been removed before grew back where it had been. It was found close to my bowel, which explained the symptoms that I was experiencing there. I actually had, I thought I had a cyst in my side, but my uterine ligament was so inflamed with endo, it was protruding in my hip. So they were able to reduce all of that, which helped my ability to get back to sport and the physical level that I was at before my symptoms became really bad. And it has helped since. having the support of my consultant at this time, having him meet me every time I walk into that office is so reassuring, because many people on the public system meet a different doctor on rotation every time, and they're using it, which is fantastic, as an opportunity to talk about the condition and the treatment and what other people have said, but you find yourself benefiting them more than benefiting yourself. So having somebody meet you at every stage of your treatment, talk you through the future planning and what will be done, a plan if this doesn't withhold, has made such a huge impact on my life. But yes, so I have been currently managing my pain quite well. I have actually finally received my appointment for the pain clinic, which I was referred to in 2019. So I'm hoping that that helps me put a plan in place going forward. But currently at 26 years of age, I am trying to consider how I would manage to take out a loan to freeze my eggs, because I would like to have a family. And these are all just the big effects that endo does have on your life. It has affected every aspect of it.
Thank you, Katie. I must say I'm very moved personally by your story, as I am by all of the stories, but particularly yours, Katie. For such a young woman to have to go through such a tough time, I'm genuinely moved. I suppose that's why we're here today, to get behind this issue, to do all that we can as individuals and collectively to put this on the agenda, to keep it on the agenda, and to do all our parts to move forward with it. And there will be many different pathways to improve and the journey for women that are coming down the line, so they don't have to go through the journeys that Derval has gone through and you, Katie, have gone through. So the aim is, I think, research is the absolute must, and that will lead to better diagnosis, better care pathways, and hopefully better quality of life for the many women that are going through this. I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity today, and I'm really honoured that you have shared your stories and your work, and I wish you all well in your future endeavours, and keep working, keep advocating, and keep raising your voice on this topic. Thank you so much. I'd like to just see now from the floor, so to speak, if there's any questions that people have for our speakers today. If you'd like to raise your hand. And Mary, has anybody typed in any questions?
Yes, Hilary, there's a few questions there in the chat. I don't know if you can see those, but if not, I can read them
Yeah,
out
you
for you
could
if you
read them
like.
out. Thank you.
Okay, just give me a second now, because Dervla did answer a few of them. There's a lot of thanks coming in actually for all speakers, but especially Katie, for sharing your experience actually, because that's what the Women's Task Force is all about, listening to women and for sharing your experience. And again, there's a good few questions there. There was a question there for Derval as well, actually. How will this new feature cope with privacy and data protection? Actually, that's in from Brendan there. So if you want to ask that question, answer that question, Derval, please, and I'll go back to the other questions that were answered as well.
Yeah, happily. And again, just echoing, yeah, Katie, I can see how emotional it is, and I fully understand that. And I think, I think what it's doing is I feel like I lost a lot of my 20s and my late teens because of this, and that's the sadness of it. And you're absolutely right. Why do you have to fork out this money? It's just, yeah, I feel for you, and thank you so much for sharing, because it really does help so many people the more people talk about it. So I think so that would have been, I think, yeah, so the new feature I had mentioned, I responded to a question there in terms of how best to inform family and friends, and educate family and friends around endometriosis. And my response was around, we're launching a feature that allows the patient, myself, to allow my partner or my mother to have access to certain parts of their journey. And that really comes from my own experience, because when you're in severe pain, and this is severe pain, you know, like Katie has painted such a good picture. You know, I was very lucky to have a child. A very surprising. I was told all my life I wouldn't have a child, and 6 weeks after having this miracle child, I collapsed with her in my arms. And people don't understand, you know, what's going on. People who are closest to you still don't know what's going on. And I ended up in A&E back then. So this feature basically allows you to nominate certain aspects of the app to have, so your partner can have access to your tracked pain or your planned appointments, and the resources section as well. And really, that what that is, it's to remove that need to constantly explain how you're feeling and what endometriosis is, because for me that was a huge burden as well, because the symptoms change literally from day to day. You know, ovulation is totally different symptom to menstruation. So the question was around data protection, and it's a very good question, and it's extreme. You know, one of the most important areas for us at Friendo. It's the same for the whole app. Our data is will be entirely encrypted, and so basically the user has the option to move that nomination back from that person at any stage that they want. But data protection at the moment it's AWS, it's Ireland based, and we intend to continue that. I don't know, hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect, thanks, Derval. Actually, there's a question here as well, and I don't know who to put it to. Is just wondering how many hospitals do the ablation surgery, including 2 new expert teams. So, Siobhan, would you be able to answer that, or?
I'm afraid not. I think that's a question that most of us have and are looking for the answer.
If you want to put that in, that's what I was just, So just one.
I'm wondering why that's being asked into, because excision, I mean, the COOM would be excision. They would predominantly be excision. So I also think it's, you know, it's a worry. It's always a worry when patients hear, oh God, I've had ablation, is it all over for me? You know, that's not necessarily the case. But it is extremely important, I think, to know exactly the experience of your surgeon, of your expert. How many surgeries have they done? Do they do? What kind of team do they do? And I think as a patient, you feel almost at their mercy sometimes. So it's always good to go prepared in asking those questions around how many ablations have you done? How many excision surgeries have you done? And but excision, as Katie said, is and Siobhan said, are the kind of key gold standards at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think Katie's her hand up there actually. So Katie, do you want to answer that? Maybe you'd have your own.
Yeah, just coming, I suppose, from the side of things with the support group, the majority, well, as Derval has said and Siobhan, excision is the gold standard, and we do have 2 centres now in Ireland that are carrying out excision. If a consultant has a special interest in endo, they may train in excision to the best of their ability, but the majority of hospitals in Ireland use ablation. And that has been the main form of treatment that many of the women that I am in the support group with or speak with online have received.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that. Just wondering, is there any other questions coming in? There was a question earlier on, just bear with me a second. It came in early in the chat, actually. Just bear with me a second now. What information or resources, now this could be directed at any of you, what information or resources do you think would help patients, family and friends understanding and recognising endometriosis? I know you said a little bit about that, Derval, but again, maybe Katie and Siobhan as well, if you want to put in there a little bit of information. Any takers? No.
I think, as Derval and Katie have very well demonstrated today, that personal stories, you know, really create that picture, create that impact. And also, I guess, below the belt, also helped to create that awareness. So creating resources that you read doesn't actually explain the impact on a person's life. And I think, it's understanding that journey and that cycle, that never ending cycle that women have to live through, is important in order to make people aware of this condition. And it's because it's very hard to describe it concisely because it is so different for every woman. And you need to, I guess, in terms of training any group, I think it's very important to incorporate those stories either in person or through that below the belt documentary, for example, so that you get a true understanding.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And again, I think we, as I said, the below the belt was screened in the Health Department of Health as well. And again, the link was sent out to the task force. Yeah, so that was brilliant. Derv, do you want to add in something there as well?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Siobhan. I do think how to get information is really to get it early. I believe strongly getting it into schools. And I don't believe it's just about informing and educating females. It's just as important to educate and inform men, and boys. And you'd be surprised, they actually really want to know. And I've said this many a times, girls are a totally different type of girl that I was back in the day, a long time ago. But I believe information campaigns, getting it as early as possible, removes that stigma and allows people to talk about it more. Yeah, I think that's where we have to go.
There was just a bit of information in there as well, which I had forgotten about it. That the 2 super regional centres for complex endometriosis are in the country. So, and again, in Cork, sorry. But the words that came out there from Katie, I think I had a few words here, 5 words: the treatment, the planning, support, understanding, reassuring, and putting all those words in together with the information and trying to get the information out there. That's the most important thing, I think, as well. And that's what we're aiming at doing today. And again, trying to get the information out there to everybody, trying to make people aware, give a bit of assurance as well, to get it early into young people, into schools, to make them aware and to show them that there's support there and support available. Hilary, do you want to add in anything there? We're just coming to the end here now.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the what needs to happen is that concentrated national and international research to identify the causes. Like we've heard from Siobhan there that she's looking at one avenue, one mechanism for this, but there could be others. There could be a combination of those, and it's important to get lots of different work streams going on the different needs. So the kind of the pastoral care needs, the emotional, the mental support, the fertility support, all of these supports for women, the multidisciplinary support if you're talking about involvement with other organs in the body. So it's just think, and then getting the kind of the excision surgery more widespread, hopefully, in due course. So I think that for me, yeah, it's just an important step just to kind of gather ourselves and move forward with research and hopefully come to get some answers for women, Katie's there if you want to speak, Katie.
Hiya. No, I'd just like to say that it's people like Derval and Siobhan and the work they're doing, and both yourself, Mary, and Hilary, creating a space to share that information. It's stuff like that that gives us hope that there are people listening, that there are people doing their best, and not only providing support for us now, but young girls who have more information available at their fingertips and the ability to look for a network of people that are both trying to help them and understand what they're going through. I just think it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So thank you very much, ladies.
Has anybody else got any comments or would like to speak?
I just was going to respond to one of the questions there. I think Dilly had asked, is it difficult to get engagement from employers in the corporate world? Which is it's a good question. And really, we see, I mean, I think what's showed here today and from Katie's story is that this is not just a whole body disease, it's a whole society disease. It impacts directly yourself or indirectly you know, it really does. And what the importance of getting employers to understand what it is and the impact is, you know, is hugely important. It's the same with educating partners around it. It's so we're not just putting the emphasis and the responsibility on the patient to educate. We have to really get an understanding from the whole of society. But for employers, to answer your question, Dilly, we've presented the cost of that it's costing them. You know, if an employee misses a third of the month, that's not good for them. And unfortunately, we have to paint it in that way, sadly. But we're getting engagement. But I will say we get a lot of engagement in Australia. They're very progressive around this. I think Hillary's point is extremely important. The more research that we get is hugely important. And Australia, I believe, are leading the way in that. But yeah, look, the way I do it is I try to talk to as many employers as possible, offer talks like this. Like, this is why this is hugely important, beneficial. And we will continue to work through our partners like Endometriosis Ireland, Australia, UK, and they will inform employers, and then we will offer a toolkit essentially. So we'll just keep banging on the doors.
I would just like to agree with Hillary that it's imperative that we get additional, more funding for research, because it's one thing identifying these women, but what next? Like, what are we going to do? We've got now a whole pile of women who are getting diagnosed. So we need to understand this condition. We need to be able to slow the progression of the disease. We need to understand why it happens. And we need to understand, like, what is normal. There are so many opportunities to innovate in this space. As Hilary has mentioned, I am looking at one particular mechanism. It's a multifactorial condition, and we need people to actually take the plunge, because it's one thing having data, but we need to action it, and we need to be able to implement something real to impact the condition. So yeah.
Thank you so much to our speakers and to everybody who's come today. I think that the onus is on us now, individually and collectively, to just keep it on the agenda, as I said, and push for more research. It's not just an Irish issue. This is a global issue for women and for society. We see the huge impact it has. So no more than other widespread diseases have gotten focused effort that has had massive impacts, like cancer, dementia, etc. This is another area that has woefully in need of further research and understanding. And I'd just like to thank you all, and hopefully if we come along in 10 years' time, we can have a different outlook for young girls that will no doubt be being suffering in this way, and hopefully they'll have a very different journey than the journeys that we've heard of today. Thank you all. Thank you.
Siobhan, you wanted to say something, I think. Did you there at
No,
the end?
I've said it. Thank you.
Perfect. I just want to thank everybody. Actually, Aoife has more information, more up-to-date information on the Women's Task Force and what they've done, with endometriosis since the Women's Health Action Plan. But again, thank you all of the speakers, both Derval, Siobhan and Katie and Hilary actually as well, for chairing today. Thank you everyone for coming. As again, this is recorded and I will be sending out the link to everybody, so you can go back over it, because you mightn't have taken it all in. And again, even Katie, you had me so emotional here as well that I will want to go back and look at it again. And the presentations as well will be up, because there's so much information and so many connections, and you will have anything if you want to reach out to Derval or Siobhan or anything, you will have the contact details there as well. So that is brilliant. And thank you again. We have raised awareness on this, and hopefully, as Hilary said, in 10 years' time, hopefully things will have changed.
Can I just add one very final point, and to say that the Department of Health has added endometriosis as a research priority for the department. So that will hopefully in due course trickle down into funding and, you know, directing researchers in the field into this topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.